Welcome, everyone, to Therapeutic Astrology Podcast. I'm Mana, and I'm here trying to talk to the best of us, the best people, and healers out there who are in some shape or form combining therapy and spirituality. Today, I'm joined by a very special person. Joel Blackstone is the founder of Taproot Therapy Collective. Let's just end with that title for now. Welcome, Joel.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, everyone wants to change it to Blackwood or Stone. It's actually Blackstock.
Oh
Which
man.
yeah, no, everyone does that. I'll say, even like here, I'll be like, it's actually Blackstock, and people are like, yeah, Blackwood, and I'm like, well, because they're more common. We thought it was like Irish cattle for a long time, like black stock is what my family always thought, but we looked it up. It's actually Viking. It's Blake Stoke, which just means black stick. And very boring family crest. It's just a black piece of wood, like a black log on a white flat banner. So not
Okay,
really worth hanging up the heraldry.
I have to
Uh,
change that. Blackstock. Okay.
yeah.
That is so weird because I thought I copied it in from somewhere actually, but
No, it just looks like that. There's
it's
not a lot of
it,
black stocks out there.
it's it's a trick you have already there. You're doing the psychology. But let me just hear your what how do you present yourself professionally,
Oh,
career-wise?
not very
Because
well. For sure. I am kind of like very intuitive trickster archetype, and a lot of my career is about democratizing stuff and taking concepts that I guess are erudite or, historic or elevated, and then just being like, hey guys, come on, this stuff's not that complicated. Here's how we can bring it into a normal world and not just kind of be a psychoanalyst on a chair, because I don't think it is. And that doesn't, and I'm picky. Like, I don't like it when people go against the heart of, Jung or something, and just kind of make it like, yeah, just like woo woo plus, the CBT is Jung or something like that makes me frustrated because I think that that is just empirically wrong. But the whole idea that you have to kind of have a million concepts about alchemy and understand anima and animus, and these are just lenses to see things that are you. And I kind of fall into the camp as somebody who like studied humanities and at Swanee was like real heavy into philosophy and things. Like if you can't say the relevance of the thing in like three sentences, how relevant is it?
ah,
Like to everyday people. I mean, maybe there's some relevance in history, and so a lot of what I'm doing is kind of trying to be, yeah, I don't want to say subversive, but a little bit more um a little bit more kind of like challenging to what our preconceptions of what therapy has to be. That this can just kind of be like a casual space. It can be
I
something
like
that,
that.
my podcast is definitely kind of button pushy, and that I'm trying to be like therapy is a part of life and art and growth, and we do
Mm.
state of the art trauma treatment, but you don't have to be a hurt puppy. It's not just like gentle, gentle time, and
Okay.
this can be something that you can just be like an artist, and you can just be a dad, and
Mm.
you can just be a mom, and you can just be a
Mm.
person and still relate to these things.
Okay,
And
so
so
your podcast is Get Therapy Birmingham.
Yeah, you can get it on the website. It's the Taproot Therapy Collective podcast,
Uh-huh.
Discover, Heal, Grow. We
Okay.
started it a while ago, which that kind of became its own story, but again, it was another thing that I kind of did on accident and it got away from me.
Yet
Um,
another thing.
it's been the
Okay,
last 5 years, yeah.
but the reason why I'm like not mentioning all of your titles is because there's so many of them. You have so many trainings, right?
Well, I don't know what they are. I probably should get a list from you. I just kind of type whatever I'm supposed to in the
I'll
forum at
send
different
it.
times.
I'll
Yeah, I
send
mean,
it to
I
you.
just kind of want to be a therapist. Like, I don't really
Okay.
present myself as like founder or clinical director just because like I'm another therapist at Taproot, and that our whole
Yeah.
project is that it's not a big clinic where like, you're a contractor and you buy out as soon as you can. You just learn how to do therapy, and then I take all your money because I have all the street cred, and then you leave as soon as you can get out and compete. It's just supposed to be kind of a community and a family and an
Yeah.
institute that we don't do as much in American psych. There's not as many like Eastlands or Berkeleys in the 70s. And
Mm.
so, it's the offices, Christy Wood and Alice Ollie, and it's their office. It's not like from
Mm.
2 hours you're from office 1B and then whatever. I don't really want to
That's
be
nice. Mm.
kind of over people. I mean, you do legally have to have a clinical director, and I am the owner and different things, but like yeah, I just kind of want to be another therapist in a practice, and
Mm.
built the place where I wanted to work, not definitely never really. wanted to be a business owner or aspired to that. So it's
Oh, well,
yeah,
the stars have their way with us. Destiny have their way with us, but we'll get back to that. But anyway, I found you from the article you did on therapy and mysticism. And so
that's
uh,
an old one. That's like
it's
one of
an
the first ones on the blog, I think. That
it's
and
one
like
of the
the death
well,
article.
this is when I'm Manna is like in I want to find people who's combining these things and then funny things come up like you. And then I found, of course, you're doing many things, but on that article it was this question about how mysticism and therapy are related, and what is mysticism and
hmm
how does it relate to therapy. Could we maybe start from there? And you can also share like where you were in your process when you wrote that.
And I learn new things all the time. Like you go back and it's like you never would really write the same thing, year after you wrote it, which is good because it means you're learning and you're growing as a writer
Yeah.
and somebody that knows more stuff. But yeah, I mean, my question is like, how does therapy not relate to mysticism? Because to me, I mean, I think the sort of like pop word for like mythology would mean a falsehood, or mysticism would mean being like obscurant.
Mm,
But, if you're taking them seriously, that's obviously not what mythology is. And to me, like if I had to define mysticism as like not, the misconception or the sort of, pop surface level word, the other meaning would just be this study of kind of patterns, especially very deep patterns.
mm,
And so when you're looking at patterns in mythology, like how are there stories that relate to the way that we make meaning? Because we made those stories. And so when
mhm,
we made the same story lots of times, or we made a story that was a little bit different, but it has these through lines, that's a pattern that I think is relevant to psychology. And when you're looking at the way, but not just that. I mean, that I'm not saying that mysticism encompasses all of these things. Like, so somebody's using tarot or they're using astrology,
mm.
they're looking for a pattern there. Somebody
Yeah.
who's doing Western esoteric magic, they have a ritual or practice that they feel like is putting them in touch with something. That would also be mysticism. And I think when psychology is trying to say, how do I cut through the noise of the front of the brain and obsessive and rumination and kind
Mm,
of contact something that's deeper or more authentic, which lots of practices have different conceptions of that.
mm,
That's also sort of mysticism because you're saying, what is the center, what is the deepest level, what is sort of the biggest pattern. Now, I think
ah,
the reason that a lot of people hear that and they get, um, guarded or defensive is they say, like, one, well, you can't really study that. You can't turn it into a number, which is like true. A lot of things you can't.
mm,
Um, but even numbers are a metaphor from distance. They're sort of this imperfect way of putting something in a box that wasn't really born in that box. So, I'm kind of distrustful of pure objectivism anyway. And
mm,
then, like, two, I think a criticism of people who would hear a therapist say that would be, well, how do you know when you're looking at these patterns that you're kind of not just making it up, right?
mm,
Or how do you know that this system actually relates to something psychological? It's not just a contained system that you can do a spell and read Aleister Crowley and bury a duck egg in the backyard and dig it up at night, but that doesn't really connect anything quote unquote real or anything that's
mm,
material.
mm,
And, again, it's like, yeah, I think that you're at risk of that. Maybe I start to see things the way that I want to see them and not really, the way that they are. But
mm,
also, I mean, those same criticisms apply to anything. How do you know you're not just making up something or cherry picking objectivity? So I'm kind of
mm,
always wanting to push back on a purely empirical paradigm when it comes to psychology because I think it's a soft science. And I think that what we're always doing is peeling back layers to go to a deeper thing. And that requires a knowledge and awareness of really deep patterns. What
mm,
parts of myself am I afraid of? What parts of myself come out? And, I'm writing that article from a kind of Jungian perspective, like Carl Jung. And so,
mm,
I think what I would say to somebody who criticizes that is like, this is too woo-woo, is that the goal of going into those deeper levels of self are for me to be able to tell the difference between, or to help a patient tell the difference between their intuition, the just kind of authentic, real self that wants to
yeah.
experience things fully without being overly protective or wounded, and their shadow, the way that they've reacted negatively to the world, built protective parts, and are reacting out of
Mm,
woundedness, and that woundedness could lead them to do something bad. But those are
mm,
both pretty deep, brainstem, subcortical, implicit emotional spaces, and so they feel the same. And it's,
mm,
I think, why a lot of intuitives are, really beautiful, mystical artists that can create these things and kind of see things that normal people can't. But at the same, or people that haven't gotten in touch with that can't. But at the same time, they're at risk of going to some really dark places or being on the right course until they're not. And then it's a hard, is that shadow and that intuition come from the same part of the brain. They feel the same. And when you're in touch with it, it feels like just an authentic channeling, you know? So that can be really
Oh,
dangerous when it's actually a trauma or kind of a shadow function. And what's happening is more like a possession of something that
whoa,
is
it's the
bad, but it
same.
feels authentic. But it's the same
It's
energy. And you
it's the
see,
same part of the brain you're saying. That I think people, at least I'm now getting like images of people that I used to know, if I may
yeah,
say like
yeah.
that.
But
Whereas,
and I think
oh,
I mean I love kind of like cult and conspiracy documentaries, and so many of those people are so powerfully intuitive. And when people talk about how they got into the cult, you know, and the person just said, you know, who are you without that defensive thing that you always do? And they had never seen that about themselves, and no one had seen it, and it felt so liberating. But
mm,
then later, you know, that's used for abuse. But the people who are usually able to do effective cults or effective, you know, kind of you know, negative things, it's like they do have access to a very deep pattern recognition,
wow,
which you have to realize, you know, just like intellect, the capacity to be in touch with that stuff doesn't save you. You know, that it's always a process of work. Some people think they're so smart that they must be right about everything, you know.
mm,
But and other people think, well, I'm just so in touch with this mystical divine intuition that everyone else is not in touch with it. That'll save me. Neither direction really saves you. I mean, there is a process of kind of separating the false self from the real self, and all psychology and you know older patterns. So I don't know if
right.
that's too long of an answer, but that's
No, no, I love the way that I love your flow of words. You're an Aries, but it's in the third house, and it's just I love it. Anyway, we'll get back to the
I don't know a
astrology.
ton about astrology.
No,
You'd have to walk me through it because I sent you my birth chart, but
yes, you did.
the last time I had anyone look at it was actually very close to when I wrote that article that you reached out about because I was just opening and yeah, I went and kind of met other business owners and would go get a myofascial release or something to see if I kind of wanted to refer to those practitioners and they knew me. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things is licensed astrologers have to have a therapist that they refer to. So if somebody has something going on
Mm,
that's dangerous or risky, they're not trying to treat it just with astrology. They have to refer to a
sure.
therapist. So I looked up some therapists that seemed like they're, or some astrologers that looked like they were interesting and licensed and talked to them. And Mandy Ray was one here that I went and I got a reading. So she got, that's, I actually Googled that email to get that information to send it to you because I didn't remember my birth hour or anything.
That is so fun that it was about that time when you wrote that article.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was about,
I
I
find
think
that
I met
pretty
with her
cool.
right after reading that one. Yeah.
Pretty
Or
cool.
writing that.
No, but we'll do the astrology in the end. Otherwise, I get tempted because I just it takes me over. But so Mr. Sim, so in that article, you also talk about different layers. I don't know if that is what you just got into there a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think my conception of that has changed much. I think my language has gotten more. I mean, what I saw was when I'm writing that article, you know, I kind of came into my when I was at Swanee, I was studying depth psychology and mythology and philosophy and comparative religion and you know ancient you know initiatory practices and mystery cults and you know Greek myth and like all of these things. And then I kind of, when I went into therapy, was like, okay, it's time to be a serious therapist. That stuff's fine for D&D, but this is real. And then kind of came in and tried to operate within a cognitive behavioral therapy paradigm because that's what everybody
Okay.
said, and then found it. This doesn't work. Like it, I don't really feel it. And then when I'm doing these practices with patients, they're like, you know, I've already thought of these things. They're on TV. I've watched The Sopranos. Like I that was my feeling too. So I was just following kind of what worked and then ended up sort of getting over the insecurity that I had to be a serious person and going back to these things that just felt more human and existential and kind of connected to the way I think and the way that I've dealt with things that have negatively affected me in the past when I wanted to change because I wasn't being the best version of myself. And then that seemed to resonate with people. So then the interest when I'm writing that article kind of became like, well, what's going on in the brain that this is relevant, you know? And then the blog and a lot of that, I mean, you can see me chewing on and trying to read about like what is the neurobiology of the brain that would make Carl Jung write about the things that he was feeling because he's writing from phenomenology. He's not saying like I did an experiment and then this is the numbers. He's just saying you sit with people for hours and hours and hours and then you see everybody go through these same processes. And I
Mm,
was seeing those layers where the people come in and there's a deflective and a defensive part and that hangs out for a while and then okay, I don't really need this anymore. And then there's a deeper thing. And I think when I wrote that, I was really chewing on like, I feel like the beginning of therapy and the end of therapy are always the same, like where there's like
Huh.
something in people that is very deep and very similar. And like, if we all had access to that, wouldn't it be a better world?
Huh.
Um, and I think that's what I was that's where I was just kind of like how do I explain how these things kind of intersect that I was seeing at the very early in my not um in the career in that capacity and trying to do trauma mental health individual work.
Yeah,
I'd been doing it for about 3 years at that point.
right. Yeah, that's so it is about that was also an example of how you recognized patterns. It's definitely how I relate also therapy and astrology in an overall way, that it is pattern recognition. But then what about a mystical experience? Do you see that happening in therapy?
I do. Yeah, because and I think when people hear of it, they think like you have to have some moment where you like lose time and peel the meat off your soul and talk directly to God, and then everything is clear. They think of mountaintop experience, which exists, but I think a lot of the times where we want to really connect to ourself, where mysticism is useful, is we kind of long for a mountaintop experience in a way that it's not going to happen. Like we want something to
Mm,
do the work for us, or there just be this big dramatic moment where the universe speaks. And it
mm,
really is more of a being quiet and going inward. And
yeah.
so I think that you see these spaces develop where when someone has let go of these protective parts, they've realized, oh, that's not really me. I'm just being obsessive and ruminative, and I'm being defensive, and I'm also like clinging to something I think I have to do, but I don't really want to. And they're going into a space where there is so much deconstruction. Those mystical spaces are at the bottom, and they're never an intellectual realization of, oh, I did the whole spreadsheet and I figured out this is 20% me and this is 80% not, so I'm going to get rid of the 80% and this is who I actually am. It never is an intellectual process. It's always a letting go, letting go, letting go, and then
Mm,
a deep listening, and then a surprise. Like, that's who I am. That's what I want. That's how I get better. I didn't want it to be like that. I didn't think it would be like
yeah.
that. And I
Mm,
think that layer, if you want to keep the language of that old article, is like the place where I was seeing so many people go into, and then thinking, and then kind of being like, I guess therapy's over. But it was sort of always like right before they thought that they couldn't change, and right before they were feeling hopeless. And then all of a sudden, a profound change came out of nowhere that I couldn't predict some of the time. They couldn't predict some of the time. It was more teaching
wow.
them to listen to something. And I was seeing that happen, and going, this thing's really old. Like, and I don't when my insecurity as a therapist went away, it's like I don't have to do it or have a technique to do it. I'm
Mm,
just teaching someone to do something that I read about in Greek initiatory rituals. This is super old and I don't have ownership of it. It's not mine. It's not theirs. It's all of ours. And so like I don't need to take responsibility for it and have a bunch of certifications and do these things. I mean, I have those, but they became the least important part of my professional identity. And so and I
mm.
think that made me a little bit more comfortable being antagonistic towards things that I think are negative in the industry, and being a little bit more of a trickster and being a little bit more of a button pusher.
Yeah, because you
About
saw that it worked the way that you did it, that it
Yeah, and
worked.
it was being ignored, which I think made
Yeah.
me angry in hindsight.
Mm.
Which I probably wouldn't have said at that time. I would have felt like anger is bad. I can't be angry at things that
I
but
I
now
love I love anger, especially on a podcast, because this is what I'm serious about, and this is what I stand for. So it's I really want to hear more about that anger. I just want to mention to you that I'm doing right now. I'm studying to become a psychotherapist. I'm a trauma
Oh,
therapist.
congrats.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm studying psychotherapy. So I'm doing an assignment on um, well, it includes a peak moment in therapy. I'm kind of making that up. I will see if I'm allowed to call it that. But
Yeah.
that's my experience. Apropos, my experience is that there is that can be that peak moment, and I'm totally
Mm,
on your team with. I'm not in charge of that. No one is in charge
mm.
of. It seems it just occurs. But so yeah, I'm curious about your experiences with more of a like
Well, yeah, and
peak
I'd love to
moment.
keep in touch with you over your career and see how that develops. And I just love connecting kind of with intuitive, interesting people that are gonna keep discovering things, because that's how I learn, is I hear the same thing that I'm kind of chewing on, but I don't know how to say it. And that I'm talking to somebody and they say, oh, I saw this. And I'm like, oh, that's it. That's what I was trying to say. I just didn't have words for it. So,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
many people, when I've like researched it, many people are talking about a turning point in therapy, but there's nuances. There's nuances, you know.
yeah, and I think a lot of that is from a grief and acceptance paradigm, which is good. But what they're saying is like, people talk about all these kind of fake problems that feel manageable or fixable until they really admit the real problem, which feels like they can't fix it. But that's the point because it has to be grieved and accepted so that I go into this version of reality that is
Mm,
actually real instead of the one that I pretend is fixable. And
mm,
there's something to that. I think that's the beginning of like real change. But I think. I mean, what I see is like more of like the mystical part of therapy is like when um I was doing things was well um like one of the things that was revolutionary for my career like really early is I was an EMDR therapist because it was like half of people hated EMDR, the other half really liked it. I got it. I got that training and I was like, well, I'll see. I don't know. It didn't do anything for me as a patient in the class. It
mm,
didn't do anything for me as a patient in therapy. But I started to see dissociative patients that had really strong reactions to it. Nothing else had worked. And so it's like,
mm,
yeah, wow, like 30% of people have this really strong reaction to this that is a neurological thing. It's not like I mean, a lot of times I think when we talk about therapy research or what's evidence-based or not, you assume that people just kind of sit there like a blank slate and the therapist is just doing this thing and then later let's back up and see if it worked or not. Well, I mean, to me, that seems wild. Like, if I'm doing a technique and it's not working, I'm not going to do EMDR for 3 months and then say, oh, did anything change? Like,
mm,
if you're not getting a reaction in 5 minutes, like, I'm not going to keep doing something, you
mhm,
know?
mm.
So, like, a lot of that, I think, misunderstands the process of therapy in real life. But yeah, basically, EMDR, like, it works miracles for like 25-30% of people that are in a certain subgroup and it doesn't do anything for like 70-75%. And people would email you and go, well, you have to use this script, you have to use, and I was like, I've read all the books, I have that script, I have the somatic thing. When I'm saying brain spotting is more somatic, it's because it activates the body more, not because I haven't read the EMDR frame. But
Oh,
so halfway,
so
go ahead.
70% is that your own number?
That's my experience. And if you
Okay.
look, I spent a ton of time looking at EMDR research because I was so confused about the split. So again, this isn't something I'm a little bit more settled on what I think now, but at the time I didn't know. And I was reading all this research and it was like, well, how are you controlling for these groups? And then you look at the group and you're like, well, you're just saying PTSD patients, which is a big ball of like 7 different types. Of course,
Mm,
it's not working for all of them. Like PTSD is not just one thing,
yeah, I know.
um, or saying borderline. Borderline is just not one thing. It's not a great diagnosis. It doesn't really describe. Um, a lot of those things lack a lot of sort of like constructive validity. Like they're just a circle that we drew around. If you check these boxes, you have this
Yeah,
thing, but it's not really,
absolutely.
from where I'm thinking, a great way of. And what I loved early was kind of Erickson. I saw a lot of Jung and even James Hillman and Erickson, which those worlds don't come together a lot. Those people didn't know each other. So it wasn't a lot of people don't make that connection. But to me, like when Erickson did hypnosis, what he was doing was taking what you describe and then turning that into this image that was not threatening because it wasn't the thing you were experiencing. It was a metaphor for it. And then saying, here's an image with the same emotional reality, and then changing that image
Ah,
as a metaphor so that your emotional reality change. If he was just saying, but you do have a way out, you could accept this thing, that would be threatening and I'd have a wall up. But when I turn it into a mouse running from a hawk, oh, I like this little mouse. I have so much more sympathy for this little mouse than I do for myself, my own wounded soul. And then he would fix the image and then he would be reclaimed. The problem is like that takes a really long time. There's a lot of kind of somatic and grounding work that are kind of hard when people are running in 15 minutes late and they're tired and a lot of different variables there. And it also is really hard to teach. And so like there's not a lot of people I think that can kind of learn how to do certain types of that. I always liked it, but I realized it didn't work for everybody because some people just were not going to calm down in the room. Maybe if I had 2 hours, which insurance wouldn't pay for, we, and some people were wealthy enough to do a 2 hour session and they would have better luck with those slower techniques. But when I found brain spotting that David Ground was doing out of New York, it was so fast. And it took people into this deep connection with their body really quickly. And it was so much more reproducible than EMDR. Even people that didn't have PTSD or didn't have significant emotional dysregulation immediately would feel something and connect to this thing. And so that was huge. and that really kind of changed the way that I was thinking in it, and really was like the current explanations for how this works. There's some pretty good guesses out there, but there isn't enough of an understanding here. And I
Ah,
just started reading so much more about neurology and all of these things because I really wanted to understand what brain spotting was doing. And and the big thing for me is when I did the training, I expected nothing. Like I was completely skeptical. EMDR done nothing for me. I was just
yeah.
the whiz kid that was going to glean a couple insights and then use them with patients and leave. And I dissociated for like 30 minutes. Like I felt like I was
Ah,
underwater, like I was moving my head a lot because it really just felt like there was pressure moving me around.
wow.
And it was like, this isn't a thing that I make up. You know, I don't do this. I had a total experience. And then I didn't know what you were supposed to experience during a
Mm,
brain spotting session either. And so because they don't really cover that. A lot of the things about what happens you have to get from other practitioners. So when I came out of the training, I'd had all these weird experiences, but I
mm,
didn't think anything of them. I wasn't confabulating them because I didn't know what you were supposed to do. I just thought it was like EMDR or something. And then
mm.
later I was like, yeah, I got the training, whatever. And somebody, was talking to me and they were like, oh, did you have the weird dreams about myth? And I was like, what? No. And I like even said no. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, wait a minute. Like, yeah, I was like, my kids were infants again, and they were like wolves with glowing red eyes that were people outside of my house. And I don't have a super active dream life at that point in my life. I did have weird dreams. And they were like, oh, were you super
Oh,
emotional afterwards? Did you have these emotions come up? And I was like, no, no, it was just, I didn't have that. I was fine. Because I was thinking about when I did it. And then I realized, like, yeah, 2 hours after that happened, I went into my wife and I was crying, and she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just need to be sad right now." And she was like, "Okay, well, you don't normally cry or whatever." And
mm.
so I didn't know what's supposed to happen, and then now I do brain spotting and I know what processing is like. So it was just this huge kind of connective thing of like, oh, and now like I'm it's very important to me to kind of like front load all that information for patients so that they know what might happen, not that it doesn't work if it doesn't happen, but what's common because I see 12 people every 3 days go through this process. And so I know what it is like, but they may just think, oh, this is just a weird thing that's happening to me because they haven't seen, 12 brain spotting patients a week for,
For sure.
uh, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's connected
Yeah,
in my
it's
head.
really
Sometimes
interesting.
that doesn't.
It's really interesting, and of course, it's depends on what modality you're curious about and you're trained in. But we have talked a lot about EMDR on this channel, so and I'm trained in bilateral stimulation. Um, so I am curious what the difference exactly is from for brain spotting because I actually have the same experience as you, and it's funny how you can go to schools and you can train in a modality that you've not tried yourself. Actually, you can
Hmm.
get the certificate. It's not a part of the requirement that you have to go
Not
into
with brain
therapy.
spotting because you could not understand it. It's all nonverbal. It's on a part of your brain that is beneath language and beneath time. And so there's so many patients that are like, but what is it going to feel like? If you just tell me more information about what it's going to feel like. And I'm like, man, I could talk to you for 3 hours. Like you're not going to understand until you just look at this for 5 minutes and then you're immediately going to feel a connection.
So
And
there
I
you
see
have to,
myself in that because that would have been that patient being like, no, 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 but explain it
yeah.
to me more so that I know. And I mean, I'll say brain spotting almost completely replaced EMDR for me.
Ah,
And like I haven't done EMDR for 5 years. And I was, and I found that it worked for so many more people and it worked faster. So I wasn't, brain spotting just worked faster. So I could show somebody something because I'm in Alabama and we were bringing a lot of these techniques here to have a place that did them because there wasn't anywhere doing it. Like I was the first brain spotting practitioner in Alabama. I was in the session with two other people, so they were, also the first, people. But like I was like I wanted to bring this stuff to Birmingham because it wasn't in Alabama, and
yeah.
um, that meant that it was weird and I had to do a lot of psychoeducation and videos about like what's the difference? How does this compare to EMDR to try and explain to people because nobody knew what it was and it
Mm,
was some things that are new or threatening. But the thing with EMDR is like you're trying to like say here's the good memory, here's the bad memory. Your brother was on the dock and he was a supportive good figure, I think is the one that was like in the training that I had, and then but this is the bad thing and I'll replace the good thing with the bad thing. And that just assumes that the practitioner knows, that the patient can know. Brain spotting really takes you to a place where so much of the time, like the problem that you thought is not really the
Mm.
problem. It's like underneath that.
But
And that takes
that's
the
what
burden
I
off me as a practitioner because I don't have to know. And I'm pretty intuitive and good guesser, but I'm not right all the time,
we
you know?
don't know. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But no, I got that from EMDR as well, that a lot is happening, at least when you're processing, and the client will have all of these images, maybe aware of them or not. So a lot is out of your control and you don't exactly know. So I get that vibe. But I'm
Well,
just
and a
curious
lot of
because,
that is a relatively recent addition to EMDR. It's that protocol has
oh,
changed a lot. Every
oh,
not just once or twice, but like every 5 years, it's pretty different. I mean, Shapiro
interesting.
was very rigid, you know, and David Grand, who invented it, he was an EMDR practitioner. And most brain spotting practitioners that I've met were EMDR practitioners that once they encountered brain spotting, they switched to brain spotting. To date,
Mm,
and I mean, I guess email me if there's somebody out there, but like to date, I've never met a brain spotting
interesting.
practitioner that encountered EMDR and then said, I'm going to switch to that. So I think that
Uh-huh.
tells you something. I'm not, and you can do good work with EMDR. I did it for a long time. I'm not criticizing it. I just,
Yeah.
I think comparing and contrasting these things, it doesn't get talked about enough. And part of that is because people don't get trained in like 10 things. They just get trained in two and do it for their whole career.
Oh
Um,
man, this is so
yeah.
exciting. Yeah, first of all, I'm definitely looking into that personally because I've, as a client, I've not gotten anything out of it myself as well. I mean, it's always nice to be with a therapist, not always, but it can be healing just being with someone, but not from that process. But then I've had clients who where it's worked very well. So, but I always like that the method works on me. You know, I like that
Yeah, the thing
direct
is like with
experience.
EMDR, especially with dissociation, like with brain spotting, the way that I discovered it basically, or I didn't discover, the way that I came to it was that with EMDR, like you're just, if anyone's not familiar, out of the podcast, you on audio too? Is everyone on video or
A
some
lot of
people on
people
the,
are on audio, but we can
you
explain
you
what you're
move your
doing.
fingers back and forth
Yes.
on a straight line in the middle of the visual field. And that was based on a lot of kind of neurological assumptions, some of which go all the way back to Julian Jaynes, about bilateral stimulation and sync and hemispheric stuff. That was like a perfectly good guess for 1980. We just know a lot more about the brain now. And some of
Mm.
it is either not right or very reductive. And so what I would see is like when that was going back and forth, and I don't think you have to know why something works. You just have to know that it works. So I'm not saying that
I
don't do
mean,
something.
the
Go ahead.
explanation is like it happens organically when you sleep, and it's an integration of your brain's hemisphere and
Yeah, and I
stuff
I
like that.
looked a lot of that because it appealed to me as a metaphor, and then it didn't really connect with the neuroscience
Oh,
on a long enough
interesting.
thing because it was like the EMDR people will tell you, well, you move your eyes back and forth in REM sleep, and so
Yeah.
you're kind of inducing that. And I understand why that connection would be made because it looks like they're dreaming. A lot of times people lose time,
Yeah.
but that doesn't really work. Like you can't start a lawnmower by spinning the blade until it starts. And you can't really induce REM sleep by moving your eyes back and forth. Like there's a
Mm.
different, like the saccades are happening at a level in the midbrain where they're not. Like you can't induce the effect of that by starting on the other end. And what
Mm.
I saw is, as I understand it, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm a social worker. I got to be in scope, but I've read a lot about it. And like when I did the EMDR movements with people, especially people that had dissociative disorders, what would happen is they're following my finger back and forth, and I would watch the pupil jump over a spot like it didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
But it was too fast to be conscious. Or I would watch the pupil go whoop, 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 like it would wibble on this spot. But it was too fast for them to be like, oh, I'm going to flutter my pupil here. It was like I just did not want to do that. And
Hmm.
so what I started doing was I would stop in the spot where I saw that.
Huh.
And then people would have this really profound, intense effect and go into deep processing about one issue instead of talking about all of them. And it
Mm.
seemed to be more surgical because they went through it in 1 hour or 20 minutes instead of multiple hours, weeks apart.
Oh.
And so I was like asking all the MDR people, but it's very protocol driven. And so they would just say, no, do the 15 movements and then 25. And I'm like, yeah, but what if it's
Yeah.
a dissociative identity disorder patient and they've totally regressed to infancy and they're not looking at, no, do the 15 movements. And I was paying for these consultations. And it really was not helpful. So I just kept talking to other providers, and somebody said, it sounds like you're doing brain spotting. I didn't know what that was. So I bought the book and I read it. There wasn't really anything about pupil wibbles or jumping over. None of that was in there. And
Okay.
so I had been a social worker for 3 months. I mean, I'm not a social worker. I'd been a therapist in private practice for 3 months. I didn't know what I was seeing. People were having intense experiencing. I didn't want to mess anybody up. I was trying to be
Mm.
responsible. So
Sure.
I paid to talk to David Grand because he has an hourly and he'll consult. And he was the one who started brain spotting. And I was like, hey, I've read your book. This is what I'm seeing. But you didn't say any of that in the book. And he was like, well, I didn't really want anyone to be going into it with that conception. I just wanted them to be following. Like I did, but he's like, yeah, but that's what I noticed. You noticed the same things that I noticed. That's how I invented brain spotting. I was a student
Wow.
of Shapiro. She said, if you change my model, you're not doing EMDR. And then, I saw this and I stopped. I felt intuition tell me with this ice skater that I wrote about in the book, stop here. And then that was better. And ultimately, it's more surgical because with EMDR, you're opening everything up a little bit and stirring all of it up. And with this, you're going
Mhm.
through one brain spot at a time.
It's more precise, it
Yeah,
sounds.
and it's more bite-sized for the person because it's
All
sort of like
right.
one issue. So complex trauma, or especially what I don't think BPD is a great diagnosis, but what a lot of people when they get diagnosed with BPD before they get to you, like what you're seeing is complex trauma, and there's so many brain
Mm.
spots. That's why they flood, and it's overwhelming when you do
Mm.
MDR. Whereas brain spotting let you go all the way through one thing at once,
So
and then be done with
interesting.
it. And the processing with brain spotting was contained and it was
Yeah.
predictable. With EMDR, they'll tell you it is, but I'm telling you, until you've seen both things, you can't really compare them. There's a lot of people that will say, no, but the research says this, or my advisor said that. That's fine. I'm telling you, until you've done two things and you felt it in
Mm.
the room, you can't compare them.
I'm coming
And
back to you when I
yeah,
have. That's so interesting. I love it. I love being inspired like this. And this is something that you've really researched. I mean, so that's is that your primary modality that you help people with?
I thought it would be, and then it's continued to evolve. So I mean, I really was just like, this is so fast because with EMDR, you don't get it much at all. But there are some people who either had something happen in childhood that they don't quite remember or they don't think about and they don't want it to be the problem, but it will come up. And there's other people that have a dissociative conditions. There's a couple of things you can step on where they're processing great, and then all
Mm.
of a sudden they get much, much, much worse and they decompensate. And so
Mm.
I had that happen, not much, but there were two cases where like somebody came in and they would say something surface level, like, I was in a car wreck and I can't, and my kids are fine, but I just keep thinking about what if they died. And like, this car wreck, I'm flashing back to it and I'm like, oh, I'm a PTSD therapist. I'm going to do MDR.
Mm.
Oh, I feel wonderful. 2 sessions, it's resolved. I feel great. I replaced the good
Yeah.
memory with the bad memory. My body's different. I feel wonderful. Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, they call back. The first time I felt that feeling was when I was 8 years old and I was raped. And I never
Yeah.
wanted to go back there. And now I can't eat and I can't work and I'm drinking too much. Oh, okay, come in. We're going to do MDR. We're going to do it twice a week.
Mm.
That has never happened to me with brain spotting. And I've done it for 8 years
Mm.
now. Because
So it goes to the
what would
root.
happen is in the room, they want it to be this thing, but the brain
Mm.
spotting goes so deep so quickly, it will take them back
Mm.
to that original thing. Because
That
you're
you're,
just staying in that one spot and you're just going all the way through what is the first time you felt this.
yeah. And the
And you
problem with
you
that
can
is that you
feel,
may,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just
No.
saying that that's the thing that the question that you get, what does that maybe remind you of? It go back to the first time for that experience, but then you may not be aware or remember really, and so
Yeah, and the body remembers a lot of the time.
yeah.
Because when that happens, it's never like in the room they're like, "Oh, this is what happened." They get a physical response that
Mm.
they don't understand. That oftentimes is really unpleasant, but I know that within a couple days that's going to resolve. Whereas with EMDR, it doesn't resolve in a couple days in some cases. And so like
Mm.
when the patient goes through brain spotting processing, they're going to have weird dreams, which if you're coming from like any kind of dream working perspective, that's useful.
Mm.
Not everyone's going to remember the dream. A lot of times they're like, it was intense, it was profound. I don't remember what happened. But the ones who do, usually there's a through line and then they're better. And with EMDR, you run the risk of bringing the memory back before the body's ready to remember the memory. With brain
Oh.
spotting, for me, what would always happen, and for most patients, is you get the physical discomfort, you get the emotional re-experiencing that can be really unpleasant, but it resolves. And then the point of any of this is never to get the memory back. If it needs to come back, it will. And a lot of times it does. And it's not, repressed memory. A lot of times it's just, yeah, if you'd asked me about that, I would have thought about it, but I never would have gone there.
Mm.
And so when I did, like, for example, for me, like, I can disclose that when I did brain spotting processing, I felt, just a lot of weird somatic overwhelm in the room. And they were asking me, like, are you okay? And I
Mm.
was like, in my head, I didn't say this, but in my head, I was like, no, I'm not okay, but I want to do this. And this is always what I've been trying to access when I've been talking in therapy and all these different modalities. So be quiet and let me feel it.
Yeah.
So I just was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I looked bad. So they were like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wanted, I knew that I was in my head. I'm like, yeah, I'm in hell, but I want to go do
Yes.
this. This is the thing that was there, but it's slippery. I've never been able to. And so then I went to my wife and I felt kind of inadequate. And I was like, I just got trained in this thing and I can do a lot of stuff. I don't know how to do this. Like, this is a whole new thing. I don't know how to do this. And she was like,
Mm.
well, good. And I was like, but I felt deeply kind of angry and inadequate and was tearful. And then I had the weird dreams. And then I had this feeling the next like 2 days where I felt like just kind of bitchy and kind of angry and like someone had failed me that was supposed to take care of me, but I was like, I'm having lunch with my family. There's no reason to feel like this. Like nothing is wrong. And when it resolved, then I had vivid memory of being 8 and asking an adult in my family for help and telling them, I think I'm suicidal because like I don't really understand. I didn't have words for it, but I was basically telling them that I wanted to die all the time at school and I didn't know why.
Mhm.
It was just not anything. I mean, you could have asked me if that was the case. I never would have thought that that was true. But I had
Mm.
this kind of flood of like, in a Walmart in Homewood in the 90s being like, this is what happened. And then somebody, lighting into me about being weak or something. And I did not care at all when that memory came back. And because it was the weirdest thing, because it was like, here's a picture of what you were feeling. And if you had told me and I remembered that, I would have been really mad. But I was like, oh, that's just the picture that goes with how that's the picture that goes
Oh.
with why I was angry. But I've already felt angry for 2 days. I'm good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
I
there
don't
was
care at
that
all about that.
distance in it.
Well,
Wow.
it comes back when you're done.
Mm.
Whereas EMDR, you're kind of mixing all these things up, and
Mm.
you can do great work with it, and that is not most people. But if you're going to do complex trauma, I don't think it's the best approach. I just think brain spotting is an evolution of it. I know it's
Yeah,
different
for
founders,
sure.
different people, but we iterate on psychology. I think it's in a new spot
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. So maybe some of the explanations are similar, but the experience is very different, it sounds. So that's, and I also
for
want
some people. Yeah,
for some
yeah.
people. And I want to comment on that, what you just said that like as a therapist, I feel this is my therapist part that's like, yeah, yeah, I'm good, even though I'm feeling maybe this is really awful in one
Hmm.
sense, but this is where I want to go. This is where I want to take myself. In astrology, we have this thing called astrologer good. I think it's like a hashtag, and it's the saying, and it just basically means okay, the stars was right, but maybe something very unfortunate actually happened. But it's a joy in an astrologer when
Hmm.
like the prediction was right, the archetypes, the theme actually happened and it occurred. And I feel this is the same thing, just in therapy. It's like I mean it's tough, but this is what I wanted to have opened up for, right?
Hmm.
And so yeah, I just love that you're like, yeah, yeah, I'm okay, but
Well, and I think why some people get burned out, like why like emotional therapy, we've kind of removed too much depth psychology from the training, too much like mysticism, I would say, from these trainings. And so what
Mm.
happens is a lot of people get really excited about somatic psychology and focusing on emotion, but we don't make the distinction, which I think a mystical language gives you this ability to make the distinction between productive and unproductive suffering. And
Ah.
so what happens is people go into somebody's obsessive and they're ruminating and okay, feel that, and I'm going to be Fritz Perls go into that, and then it doesn't stop because they don't have the tools to get out of it. And then the practitioner's like, this goes nowhere. It's not evidence based. I'm just going to go back to CBT and tell you what to do. Well,
Mm.
that's not productive. What I was feeling during brain spotting was not the way that I'm self-defeating. It was a thing
Mm.
that I always knew wasn't me, but felt like me that I wanted to deal with, and I didn't have words to deal with that.
Mm.
And that left. And
Mm.
I mean, I faced it. It was not fun. But that's what everyone wants, I think. But we lack the
Yeah.
language to ask for. And increasingly, the profession is losing practitioners' ability to lead people there, which I think is my biggest gripe with our industry.
It's so important. I think when you've undergone a lot of therapy, you know that nuance of where you get stuck in something or something overtakes you, and that's like the not productive suffering, I assume. And then what you're talking about is something where it like it's connected to some sort of release as well.
Hmm.
And so, okay, so let's. because we don't have so much time, but let's definitely talk more about your anger and then your astrology after that.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, anything you want.
So
I've got
you're
a minute today. I'm actually not having to run out, so if you need to go long, I'm happy to.
you're okay. Good, good, good.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad because otherwise 3 minutes would be a little a little too small for this. But so what is it that so I hear different protests in you, like the protest of people just only using one theory. Is that
hmm
correct? And where you're
Well, yeah,
like
and even the
open it
good
up.
ones, because there's a lot of people that would hear what I just said and they would say, "Oh, IFS can do that." Or
Yeah.
DBT can do that. And I'm not saying they can't. What I'm saying
No.
is, like, I don't want to just, I never got trained in a modality and said, now I can do it. I always was in that modality as a
Mm.
patient because I wanted to know what it
Yes.
felt like. And so
Exactly.
I've been in all those modalities. I've been in DBT, I've been in IFS, I've been in Jungian analysis. And so they had benefits, and I knew what that benefit was. And what I'm saying is the benefit from brain spotting was immediate and it was distinct.
Hmm.
It
So
was a
important,
different thing.
so important,
Yeah.
so important. I mean, it's I can't even understand why it wouldn't be a requirement that you would have the therapy on your own body. It's in everything that I've learned, it's made a huge difference how I've received it as a patient, a client myself, for sure.
hmm
Okay, but open up the floodgates, Joel, with me.
Yeah.
Just like, what is it? What are you really upset about? What should be different?
Well, I mean, I want to make a distinction between pointing out where something doesn't work and telling people what to do because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can tell you a way that I think is more beneficial to think as a therapist. I don't know where that leads you. And I'm not saying do this kind of therapy and not that kind.
But
I,
don't you think that it's so important where we feel the fire inside of us, where we feel this is not how is supposed to be. It's
yeah,
not that we go out and command other people to do it, but it's just
I
like it's
see,
important to
yeah,
listen to.
like I see professionalism to just, I see professionalism that really is just disguised avoidance. And a lot of that is this
Ah,
evidence-based practice paradigm. And I mean, I like science. I like neurology a lot. I like looking at these things. But if you just get
yeah,
ChatGPT to summarize this, or you read the abstract and then you say, okay, this works or it doesn't work, you're not
yeah.
reading research. That's not what research is supposed to do. It's never how it was read, up until 5, 10 years ago.
Disguised avoidance.
hmm
I really
Because we
love
want a
that.
certainty that is not there. And if you invent it, it's there, but it's not real. You always sit with uncertainty in this profession. And if you can't do that, I don't know that you can do this.
If you can't do what?
Sit
Sit
with
with
uncertainty.
uncertainty. Oh, sit with
hmm
uncertainty. Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay. And so you are a great synthesizer,
hmm
combining different modalities. And that's one thing, like that's your thing. But then is the reason why you have this protest, is it because that you've met people not accepting that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was asking questions that nobody had an answer to, and so they put me
Mm,
in a box in grad school, in the profession. And they were great people too. It's not like I had bad experiences until I had a good one. I had good and bad experiences.
yeah.
But yeah, the people that I had the worst experiences with were the ones that were like, "There's one way to do this. If you do this, the client will get better." And I kind of had insecurity about like, is that working? Now I've seen some patients of people who have said that or have that, and those patients have been in therapy with them and didn't go anywhere, and now then they did something else with me or with somebody else at Taproot and got better.
Mm,
Yeah, I think when you have this take that this is the most evidence-based modality, so it works for everybody. And my advisor said that it worked for everybody. And if you follow these
mm,
steps, it's going to work. That
mm.
even if you are mature enough to not get angry with the patient, their patient picks up on this feeling that they're doing something wrong because they're doing
Yeah.
what you're telling them, but they're still not getting better. And then they feel defeated and then they feel bad, which can be part of the
Yeah.
process, but in a way that doesn't resolve. And so like when I hear somebody say even modalities I like that I think have a good incentive structure and point back to layers in a better way and control for different types of memory in a better way than some modalities do, you can still do those modalities in a bad way. There's tons of
Mm,
CBT practitioners that I love and refer to because I've seen their work and they're not avoidant and they're using that as a
mm,
primary starting point. And they're going into things that
mm,
they've just figured out.
mm,
But yeah, I think that this thing works for everybody. There's a series of steps. If you follow them, you get there. When you try and apply that language to something like therapy, it's not building a bridge. It's not splitting the atom. It doesn't behave that way. And
mm,
even hard sciences, I don't think, behave that way.
mm.
Discoveries in hard sciences, there was no, you know, a lot of people thought that the next level of quantum physics or the next level of, classical physics moving into particle physics was like impossible at each step, and then found out
Mm.
it wasn't, but the science at the time said that this doesn't work.
And
And
it
then it
worked.
ends up you can split the atom. Yeah.
So that what you're saying is you're protesting to that one thing should fit for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's the problem is reducing
Uh-huh.
it to an if this and that formula. I don't think therapy can do that. I don't think
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
psychology can do that.
So it was tough for you because in EMDR there is that protocol. Is there not a protocol in brain spotting?
It's more open and like anything, I think most people who have done this for a while are not going, okay, I'm doing a DBT framework right here where I'm trying to do distress tolerance. Now I'm going to switch to a somatic experiencing framework and I'm going to be moving in and out of the window of tolerance with the patient.
Uh-huh.
And oh, now I'm switching to like they're not really thinking mechanically like that. It becomes this kind of intuitive thing. And I think with brain spotting, I don't know a lot of brain spotting practitioners that have done it for 3 years that are going, I'm going to move to super duper resourcing and now I'm going to switch to, it's just sort of an organic thing that becomes
Mhm.
part of how you're interacting, but not, protocols that you're implementing.
And
But
that
yeah,
was
that
some. Hmm?
you teach things based on protocol, but I think it's more open is the short answer.
Okay, like that. And you said something in the beginning around how you preferred therapy to be natural. Is there something, do you have a point about that as well? Like rather than speaking in a different way, or yeah, what are your experiences with that? There must be something behind your statement.
Well, I think there's like a lot of patients that come in and they assume that we know something that they don't, which
Yeah.
maybe is true in the way that that's true of any two people, but what it isn't true is like you're not the best expert in how to be the best them, and you're really not, you don't know, and because they don't know what is
Mm.
going to be what they actually want or what the real problem is
Mm.
at the next level of good therapy. And so much of it is like, I don't know, let's discover together. This is collaborative, but it also is just encouraging them to make room for it. And if you're
Yeah.
pretending like or this thing has a schedule and you were following the system, I don't think you can make room for that.
Mm.
And a
Mm.
lot of the incentive structures of insurance and different things want that to behave that
Mm.
way, but you can want it all day long. I mean, it works like that or it doesn't. And I don't think it
Mm.
does.
That's so interesting. We're like fighting to get jobs as psychotherapists here. I mean, some people can manage just in private practice, but there's a real struggle to get hired. To, there's a lot of unemployed psychotherapists. I mean, they do other stuff then, but
Hmm.
there's too many psychotherapists compared to people who can afford it here at least. And so the guess it's called the union, the organization of psychotherapists are trying to get now the insurance company on, but we know from other countries that
Hmm.
that's also problematic. I mean, it would be great with more clients, but then do we have to do it in 20 minutes? And are they gonna, you know, competition for the lowest price, or how is that
Hmm.
gonna be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these problems have a political element, but at the root, they're people problems. Like when I talked on our podcast to an Australian provider,
Uh,
she was saying, we do have a public option here, whereas in America we don't. Other than, Medicaid is kind of you have to jump through certain hoops to get, and then a lot of people don't take it. But those same problems with the bureaucracies emerge because bureaucracies are supposed to say this is a protocol, this is how it works, and sort of deflect just by the design. That's not an immoral or moral thing. It's just an amoral thing. It's just a
mm,
thing that they do is to try and standardize something, make sure that it works this way. Have a checklist. And like in the podcast I'm doing now, which is a history of American psychology, with
mm,
psychology itself kind of as the character, is like those that's kind of this the theme song and one of the themes that run through the show is called Cold Machines, Warm Ghosts. And the idea is like that cold machine is not going to go away because we have to have it. We live in this material world where those things have to exist. But the warm ghost is the point. And like my criticism is where we start to mistake the protocols and things that are built, I think,
mm,
around managing insecurity that need to be there and always will be there as the point of it instead
yeah.
of an inevitable thing that we have to do. And I've seen people kind of mistake the mirror for the object in research
Mm,
and in
mm,
therapy for a while. And
yeah.
that if you want to get to the core of my rage, that's it. I think that is incredibly self-defeating and silly. And I know,
Ah,
and I'm angry at it because I relate to it. I've done it. I remember that. Um,
Like as a client or as a therapist, you've done it.
both, both.
Okay. Yeah. 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 And it's upsetting. I mean, both. Yeah. As a client, but really frustrating. As a therapist, really
Yeah, and
annoying
so
if
you want to
you.
save people from it. You want to save
Yeah.
them from the thing that you did to yourself,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
I think a lot of is how new therapy models come out is people kind of hit a wall and they don't get better in these different ways, and then they want to discover it, and then they figure out how to heal themselves, and then they want to share that.
Mm,
That's the through line in a lot of the biographies that I read.
absolutely. Yeah, it is. Oh man, I love getting into your core rage
Yeah, I'd love
a
to
little
talk about
bit.
ETT if you've got time, because that's another fascinating one. That's the light and color guy in Texas, Dr. Stephen Vasquez.
We talk about what did you call it? ID.
Emotional transformation therapy or
I
ETT.
read that on your website. That was one of your titles. Yes. No, please share about that.
Well, so I mean, I thought I'd do kind of brain spotting forever, but I still do. But I thought that would be kind of become my primary modality on, with Jungian, kind of depth psych and parts-based experiential therapy as the lens, and then that is more of the technique. And then because I used to do somatic trauma mapping where I was trying to recognize when people felt that and where it was, and
Mm,
that I did a good job at that, but it took a long time. And with brain spotting, there was just buy-in immediately. And so many of these new therapies, I think people act like, well, you just have to be in it for 30 sessions and then you're going to see the effect, and then you'll go out and tell your friends and then whatever. But we kind of have to, especially the pace the world's moving now and the language it
mm,
speaks, we have to kind of be better salesmen. And I'm not a salesman, I'm not an advertising guy, but you do have to know how that works. And with brain spotting, it was like, I finally have something that I can show you in 15 minutes, something that you can't explain, that you've
yeah.
not experienced before. And that is so powerful because it means that you're going to come back and you're going to go all the way through this and you're going to get better. And
Mm,
when I'm asking you to have buy-in to EMDR and it's going to be 4 sessions before you really go anywhere and we're doing containers, or I'm asking you to do 30 sessions of Jungian analysis or 10
mm,
sessions of parts-based something, I don't have that. I'm going to lose people at session 2 that just kind of go, I don't get it yet. And I've already given
yeah.
you 2 hours and that's all you get. And maybe
And
that
it's too
isn't fair.
expensive or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I was saying on the podcast, I was learning about how brain spotting worked and how we can access these deeper layers of the brain through basically biohacks and evolutionary glitches really quickly, and how
Mm,
empowering and neat that could be and what it could say for the future of the profession. So I was always saying, like, don't just tell me my advisor said this works for everybody. If
yeah.
you've actually done this and you can say
Yeah.
lifespan integration is playing with narrative memory, so like narrative stuff, it's great, but EMDR for flashback re-experiencing, it does this, and you can
Mm,
compare and contrast it. Call me. I want to know where these
mm,
are. I kept hearing about this guy in Texas. The providers sounded really smart. The patients that had gotten better sounded, very better and informed. And so
mm.
I was like, oh, I said I would do it. So I, go to Texas and I pay all this money, and this guy's talking about how color and light can heal you. And I was just like, this is not like this is a scam. Like, there's no like, and so I volunteered. Like, I went up and I he has a device that you basically the color changes and
Okay.
you indicate when you feel like the color has stopped changing, but it's always changing. The whole board is kind of a rainbow. So where it stopped changing is where you've dissociated. And
Ah.
those dissociations relate to certain types of implicit emotional memory, certain types of and so for mine, he was like, it sounds like you're talking about all these things. You kind of talk too much, but like what you're saying is all the through line of all these are kind of trapped and controlled and manipulated. So boxed in, why don't you look at
Mm,
yellow? And I looked at yellow and the whole board turned black. And it's just a printed board and I couldn't believe it. So I was like blinking and trying to make it not do that because I didn't think it worked. And then I touched it and he was like, no, please don't touch it. I ask you not to. These are $500. Like, don't do that. And I couldn't explain it. And even after experiencing it and feeling so much better and seeing the stuff that I really couldn't explain, I was like, this is not going to work for patients. I'm going to look crazy. But I had the book where it's like, this is what's happening in the primitive parasympathetic. This is what's happening in the parasympathetic. This is what's happening, or the modern parasympathetic. This is what's happening in the sympathetic nervous system. And when
okay. It
these
was
colors come up,
explained.
this is what they'll do. And the
Mm,
patients don't know that book. And I'm looking at it and I'm doing the chart and they're telling me exactly what is in the book. And it took 3 months of that before I was like, I don't have another explanation. I can't talk myself out of this. And I've tried to for 3 months because I really want to I don't want to be somebody that just embraces everything and decides magic is real. I really want the bridge between the things that I think are precious and cool and deep and abstract and hard to quantify and something quantifiable, the neuroscience of how they might plausibly work.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
it works amazingly. You can get things very surgically because you have a readout. Basically, you know immediately what kind of emotion they're avoiding and what you're working with. And even in therapy, it's like somebody might be talking about anger and I'm angry, whatever. But that isn't really the emotion they're feeling, or they may be talking about I feel trapped or I feel, scared or something, but really anger wasn't allowed in their family and that's what they're feeling. But
Hmm.
they're calling it this, and so you're treating it like that. And the ETT techniques, I mean, there's several different devices and they do different things. But Vasquez found all those through functional optometry. There were functional optometrists who, when somebody couldn't see a certain color, like they had a color blind like effect, but the structural optometry people had looked at the eye and they're like, you don't have the deficit. Your rods and cones are working, so you should be able to see this. They
Huh.
would show at a really high flicker rate, at a really specific hue, those colors to the person on these screens. And then the people would have these huge re-experiencings of trauma and they would get real activated and then they could see that color again. And so Vasquez was like, he wasn't an optometrist. He's got a PhD and I think he's an LMFT and an LPC, but he was like, you're activating PTSD. And that was in the 80s, the beginning of what became ETT was him realizing that there was this relationship to color and implicit emotion. Um,
Yeah.
which sounds wild, but if you look at the brain, it does process that information that way. People see things. We react to color in certain states, not all the time, but we react to color under certain conditions before we actually see the color. That B1 pathway goes 95% of it's processed in the brainstem before it goes to occipital. So
How do I
before
know
you
then that's the color? How do I know? How can I react to something I haven't seen yet?
Well, your body's reacting to it. Like, so if you look at the V1, like you think the V1, you'd think that like the Blu-ray cable comes out of the DVD player and it goes directly into the TV or something. But really that, HDMI cable, when it comes out of the back of your eye, I mean, it splits because you don't have two sensors in the
Mm,
back of your eye. You actually have, you don't have one like a camera film. You actually have two. So
mm,
based on the side of the eye you're looking at, it mixes together. So being a little bit reductive, but all of those fibers wrap around the subcortical brain and are processed slightly before they go to occipital. Not all of them, about 95%. So before they go to your occipital, where you see an image,
mm,
your body reacts to something because emotion, what is emotion? It's supposed to be telling us how to anticipate the world that we're about to be in, not the one I'm in right now,
mm,
but when it's working, the one that I'm about to be in, based on all
mm,
of these cues so that I can anticipate and kind of solve a problem. And some of that, like, I have a book on a technique that is under peer review, probably won't be out for a year or 2 years. But some of that, after digging into it, the jury's still out. Like, is that an evolutionary glitch where the brain just kind of processes information this way and we can use it to help? Or was there something in evolution where we're starting when we're seeing red to look for fruit and sense skin tone? And because we don't just evolve the ability to see color from black and white, it's a layered thing where
mm,
slowly the eye changes and then we get the new ability to see these colors and then these colors and then these colors and then the
mm,
last one is hybrid colors.
mm,
So how did I don't know. I don't know if how much of that I think was actually, an intelligent kind of design of the brain was anticipating what it needed, and how much of it is just kind of a weird byproduct of how it evolved, or maybe a little
mm.
bit of both. But
Interesting.
yeah, it does work. It does work either way. Um,
So you work primarily with that now? Like, so you have
I
these
use
boards?
Brainspotting, I use ETT,
Yeah.
and then I kind of combine them, which was the beginning of what the book is about. It's to putting all of these stuff over the history of my career together. It all just kind of synced up, and I saw this way to do all of it a little bit faster. So I do some of that now too.
I'm so excited to read the book and how annoying that a peer review is going to take so long. But
Well, I can give you a copy. I can send you a PDF. There's people that have read it.
okay.
It's just I mean, it's not a secret.
But
And
you
a lot of
can't sell.
providers have come by and tried this stuff because they've heard about it and they wanted to see what it was like. And I have no problem doing a demo for another provider. And most of them have been really interested and read it and wanted to do it whenever it's available, but it's not it's not really
But it's
available as a
not.
technique yet.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. So people listening, they have to wait or what?
I guess I don't know. My people were frustrated because they wanted me to. I mean, I just would be happy being a therapist, and then when I found this, and people wanted to know how to do it, the other practitioners at Taproot initially were like, "Yeah, you're always on about some new thing," but then they tried it, and they were like, "Oh, this is super fast. Like, what is happening?" And
Okay,
then they were
nice.
trying to be like, "Could you tell me the steps?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, just do it like this." And they're like, "Oh, it's because it works like that." And I'm like, "No, no, no." And they're like, "Could you write it down?" And then
Ah,
at that point, anyway,
you
it took
might as well write it
3 years to
down.
write a
Yeah.
book, but we've done it for a while. I've done it for 4 years, and it's just kind of a fusion of brain spotting, some other biomarkers that we found that I know that means a certain thing's happening, so it's more reliable.
Mm,
And also, I think adding the some of the effect that Vasquez found with the color, what it does is it lets you be able to get know that they're ready to kind of process, and so there's a
mm,
lot more of a effectiveness because you're waiting until they're ready.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. I think when you mentioned IFS, I mean, that's just one of those things where I've taken that away from like we have our protectors for a reason, and you can't just take something away and then you're completely exposed to your deepest trauma. That's not very helpful. So being ready, I think, is a big deal.
What I think those like because I mean what Schwartz did with IFS is like he took Fritz Perls' experientialness and then put it together with Carl Jung's parts in a way that it doesn't take 20 years to learn. You know, that you can teach attack and an eating disorder treatment how to do pretty good therapy that's not avoidant fast. But
Mm,
it's a protocol to get that stuff going. But I think, the protective parts or Jungian archetypes or any of that, I mean, those are
mm,
constellations between the overlapping. You're never just in one type. You're always kind of you can prioritize one, but you're always experiencing most of them in different degrees. We have different types of memory, and we also have different
mm.
implicit emotional states that we either are enmeshed with or we avoid. Like if you look at Mary
Ah,
Main's work, and those constellate basically into archetypes or parts. Like which type of emotion is being enmeshed with, which is being avoided, and which type of memory am
mm,
I in? Like
mm.
if you want a bridge to astrology or something, I mean, these are kind of constellations of that. And I think that's
Right.
why they look archetypal, and you can kind of see them echo through myth.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
maybe
that's
better,
kind of an aside, but I don't know.
yeah, better understand it maybe through that image or that metaphor of, yeah, who knows what it is. Oh man, I'm so inspired and and a little bit like overwhelmed from all the information too. But
Well, there's a ton about it on our website that's
yeah,
free, just because that website exists, the podcast exists to just kind of get some of this stuff out
yeah,
there
it's good.
in a way that is semi-vetted and available to everybody so that, people can see it.
Wow. Okay. S- what is it called? Food for thought is what I want to say.
Hmm.
Food for thought. But now I have your chart up, your astrology chart up. Let's totally go there. I mean, you just have so much happening right now, Joel. I have to tell you. I mean, if you don't know, I mean, you have a lot of heavy transits.
I'm about to go to New York to demo the technique for
Really
a provider actually in 2 days, so I hope that that is good. I don't know. I mean, not that
amazing.
anything's good or bad in tarot or astrology, but I hope it is productive.
Exactly. You are an informed man for sure. It's not good or bad, but it's definitely that's really good. Yeah, that you have some empowering journey coming up because that's what I think it's about. Definitely empowering and also it's I can say a few of the things that it is. It is Chiron. It's right now on your sun, and Chiron is that wounded healer archetype. I mean, you can
Hmm.
call it that, and it has many more sides to it, but just
But he
for
could heal other people. He
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 can,
just could not heal himself.
yeah, yeah. Now he's there on your sun, and that's kind of yourself. So what's gonna happen with Pluto on your ascendant and all of the Aries planet going through going through your sun is in Aries, so going through who you are. Um, I think it will lead to empowerment. Like you are teaching someone else what this is related to your own wounding in a way, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think it all
why do
is.
we become therapists
I
if
try and
there's
keep my shadow in the
wounding?
room. I mean, another takeaway from biography is the people that are like, no, I'm done, I'm healed, I'm in a new phase.
Yes.
Those are the ones who, you see inflation creep into the career and bad things happen. And I try and be kind of self-deprecating and use myself as an example and know exactly what I'm bad at and be if somebody is like, oh, that's inspiring or something, it's like, well, thank you, but also you're inspiring and also I'm kind of a mess, because I want my shadow in the room so I know where it is. Um,
I so love that about you, and I see myself in that. And we do share that we are in the same Pluto generation. It's something I care a lot about, Pluto generation. So we are both in Pluto in Scorpio generation, and that is the therapist or the shaman, or however you want to be a detective of truth. But it's definitely that. And so the worst thing is like getting idealized, and then because then you're just gonna fall.
Yeah. Yeah, and
People,
and if I was like, I discovered this new technique and I have to share it with the world and I'm the messiah that will bring in a new era, I think that's problematic. I noticed something that is old as dirt. It's not mine.
yeah,
It's effective. I hope people use it.
yeah,
It's a way to access something but I think it got so much easier for me to be able to rewrite the book to not have the insecurity that the first draft had, where I was really writing against my critics instead of for somebody that I wanted to connect with. And when I was just kind of like, it's not about me. And, if this doesn't go anywhere, that's fine. The
mm,
unlived life of the parent is a big force. I want to make sure I've dealt with all of my stuff so that my kids don't inherit it. And
yeah.
yeah, I want to try. And if I fail, that's fine. I mean, I'm not, my life's probably much easier if I don't start a therapy modality or something. But there are some avenues I feel like I should, try and share with people.
Yeah, it's funny to hear you speak like that. Like, oh, I never thought I was gonna. The other people they want me to, but there's probably all of this potential going on in you that's just it's hard for the world to deny. But it's I'm also curious about how you like not wrote against people or against
Well,
who would.
I just sent you the PDF of the book, but there's halfway through the first case study is actually me, because
Okay.
like I say that I'm explaining kind of the thing, and I can't be too specific about some of it, but I basically everyone, because we see people that are like street homeless, and we also see people that are like executives of huge companies and very
Yeah.
successful doctors. I mean, we wanted to build that practice. A lot of people said your brand can't do that, and I kind of was like, I'm gonna try. And so
Yeah.
Taproot, I mean, really from a business perspective and from a clinical perspective, was a huge experiment. There was nothing we could model
Mm.
it on. How do you give people ownership of what they do
Wow.
and not just kind of exploit them, but make them more money than they would make on their own? Because that's important to me. If I can't do that, why would they work here?
Huh.
Um,
Yeah.
like and be a part of it. And so when I was and I also just didn't intentionally do any of these things. Like we kind of were like, it'd
Mm.
be really neat to have a collective, but I don't know if we'll ever do that, and who knows. And
Mm.
then people were trying to work there, and it's like, okay, I'll rent this, and I was like, oh shit, I'm a clinical director. I never meant to do that. I never really wanted to
Never
be a
meant to
clinical
do that.
director. Like I kind of don't like authority, um, and so
Yeah.
like so I'm just going to enforce things that are your board's rules or state law. Or, in the best interest of patients, but I'm not just going to write in blue pen or else you're in trouble. Never write in pink pen. Those kind of rules are the ones that I don't like.
Uh-huh.
And so when I was writing the book, I knew that I was a social worker with a straw hat and no shoes from Alabama that was basically saying that I came up with this new neurology theory in my garage in the book, which isn't
Ah,
what happened. I just noticed
no,
something
no.
that worked with patients and kept
Yeah, yeah.
following that. And then was like, what the hell is this? And then asked
Mm.
5 or 6 other practitioners to replicate it. They all did and were like, what the hell is that? And I was like, I don't know. And then I emailed neurologists that were kind of in this world and but I didn't want woo-woo guys. Like if I didn't really want to email people that were already sort of in the world of like
Mm.
rainbow healing and crystals because I wanted people
Mm.
that were not going to believe me and then have to look at it. And and a lot of people it was so helpful. I mean, it took a really long time to meet with some of them because they're busy, but when they looked
Uh,
at it, they were like, no, there's this pathway in the brain and this is what it's doing. And if what you're doing is working, this is there. And it's not like these things aren't connected. That, I mean, you may have found a way to modulate these pathways and so, it was an iterative thing, but when you're writing that in a book, what it looks like is you're just saying, I reinvented neurology in my garage, which isn't what happened, but I was aware of the
no,
optics of that and I was very insecure about it. And so a lot of the
like
book
that.
was sort of angry at not the science, but the science flavored capitalism of
Uh,
a lot of psych research. and the blind spots that a lot of practitioners have because it benefits them not confronting their insecurity.
Mm.
And it was angry, and it honestly was like funny and cool. Like it
Mm.
probably it's like a fun draft to read if you already think what I
I'll
think.
enjoy it for sure.
But I don't think it was, mature, and I don't think it was effective.
Right,
And so
right.
I had something really bad happen to me. And so the name of the technique is SLT, or spectral labyrinth technique, which is that's the first time I've said it publicly. But we've and it isn't a new thing. It just lets you do a lot of existing things
Yeah.
faster. It's a technique, not a new modality. And so I basically was breaking down and didn't know if I could function, and I was looking
Mm.
down the barrel of some really big things that were not just emotional, were very practical. I didn't know if my
Mm.
life would be okay, and I had been
Mm.
victimized by somebody who I had tried to help and
Mm.
had loved and had been, really trying to, I it wasn't related to business at all. It was a personal, thing,
Mm.
where I just felt really hurt and then was attacked, and I didn't know if there was like a way that I was going to get out of it, just practically. And
Mm.
everything's fine now. It worked out. That was years ago, but
Oh, good.
I was just trying to function. And Emily was
Yeah.
like, my wife was like, "Why don't you do SLT on yourself?" And I'd done it, before, and I was like, "Oh, I've done it before." And she's like, "No, you're not a good spot. You're the therapist you're seeing. You talk about how talk therapy has limitations." And so I did it. And when I did it, I was so angry because I was like, this isn't fixing it. Like this isn't
Mm.
making the problem is real. And these
Yeah.
things may happen and have this negative effect on my life. And I was so angry because I was like, I didn't want it to be better because I knew that there could be outcomes that I may not be able to live with. And then
Could be a real threat.
when,
Yeah.
yeah, and then slowly through each one felt like, yeah, that's just true. And
Huh.
you can't do anything about it. So calm down.
Mm.
And, um, and I processed a lot. And so I do the first case study in the book and say, when I wrote this book, I, this is a completely different draft than I rewrote it from beginning to end because it became a different thing after that. I realized, and so to me, that is kind of interesting because I wanted to do it this way, but then when I really had to look at myself, that wasn't what I should have done. And
Oh.
so there was too much of the shadow in there. There was too much insecurity, me doing things that I knew weren't effective, but I was right, so I was going to do them. Um,
Joel,
and
this is amazing. This is so but this is what you're talking about with Chiron on your son. Like whatever you're gonna teach people from here on is like you've really done the inner work and you've really tested it out. You know, what you're saying is a testament to that it, yeah, that you have yourself in it, right?
Yeah, and I tell people all day. I mean, I was telling people while I was doing that, it doesn't matter if you're right. Of course you're right. Like the point of life is not to be right and alone. It's to be effective and to figure out what to do with that. And I felt like I was right, so I'm an exception to these things and all the things that I tell people not to do, and it wasn't true, and I had to face that. And it wasn't pretty, it wasn't glamorous and whatever. I mean, the processing from that session when I did SLT on myself was really brutal.
Uh-huh.
And I felt really untethered for like 2, 3 days because the issues were
Mm.
really big and the trauma was really big. And
Mhm.
my wife was like, I was like, I feel like I'm going crazy. And she was like, aren't you on the phone with people like every weekend while they're processing, either checking in on them or they call you and you're telling them this is totally normal.
Mhm.
This is metacognition. You're feeling the emotion, but it's not possessing you. Like you're not going to act on it and do anything bad, but you're with it. And that's why
Mm.
your brain's learning to deal with it. Aren't you always saying that on the phone, And I was like, yeah, but this is me. That's not, it doesn't matter. I feel crazy right now. And then like it always does, the processing went away and I integrated and I wrote a different version of the book.
Ah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. That's the highest version, yeah, but it's tested on yourself like that. And in the darkest hours and being also open about it, I feel that is a gift to the field as well. I don't like
Mm.
those avoidant psychologists too much when it's like that. Um,
Well, that's why it's so healing to say, is because I think when I was in it, a lot of that stuff is beneath language. But if I could
yeah.
try and reduce it by putting it in language, what I was thinking is this doesn't fit my self-image. It doesn't fit what a therapist is supposed to be doing. It doesn't fit what I'm supposed to be doing if I'm delivering this important modality and if I'm being a therapist, if I'm being who I think I'm supposed to be.
Hmm.
And at the end, it's like, it's what's happening. It,
Yeah.
you know? what is happening. It doesn't matter what's supposed to. That's
Exactly.
um,
I think you can join me in calling yourself a counter movement. I tend to call myself that because it is different and it's not what people have seen before. Of course, like you say, I think how can you in these times invent something completely new in terms of
yeah,
therapy? I
it's
think
all going to be putting it back together in
it is.
synchronistically.
So in some way or another, and just I feel like that whole thing that you're also talking about is your Gemini and Sagittarius planets, and that's the I have the truth versus I'm gonna keep investigating, and that's so they're opposing each other, so they need to like figure out a way to go forward always like, okay, yeah, now I arrived at this truth, but I'm gonna keep studying because
Hmm.
there's gotta be more to this. And
Hmm.
so that's really strong in your chat. And also I want to mention that the Gemini is related to the brain, the nervous system, restlessness, doing a lot
Hmm.
of things at once.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely a big thing in you. Do you know the Gemini archetype?
No, I'm not really. I don't know a ton about astrology.
Mm,
A little bit about tarot, but I never really came at this stuff through that world. Like I like the
mhm.
overlap, but I'm not terribly learned in that area.
It's beautiful. I love your chat, especially because you've just told me what you have. I'm like, oh, this is so good. But so yeah, what's coming up? I definitely think it's like just more self-empowerment. And a big theme in your chat is also that, I mean, you're not supposed to compromise, but then there's a group, so you have to make a compromise. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you're supposed to not compromise, and you're
Hmm.
not going to, but then there's a group, and in that group there needs to be, made some choices that you wouldn't had made yourself, and that's actually making you comfortable in a way
Hmm.
to be
Yeah.
adaptive around some people. So yeah, what's coming up is I think is related to very central issues for you, and I can't say what that is because I don't know you that well, but just maybe something around that, your own autonomy and how to be in a group as well.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's all relevant. And I like I think a lot of people get hung up on like astrology and tarot of like, is it real? Can it really whatever? And that's coming from some paradigm of can it predict the future or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think all of these things are just kind of lenses to look at yourself, even the neurology. And
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it like me calling my thought process right now, a sensory gate opening or something. That's also just another
Hmm.
metaphor that helps me understand something. You
Yeah,
know,
wonderful.
as far as the stream of consciousness, I don't know. It matters what language you choose. And like, there's a practitioner in our practice who does tarot, and I've had her read
Yeah.
at different places. It was always super helpful because it was like that is what's going on. It is what I was thinking, but it was not the way I
Mm.
was thinking about it. And it's empowering to kind of deconstruct it and look at it. So
For
yeah, I
sure.
appreciate
So
that. I think that is spot on and very helpful.
good, good. And so here in the end, I just was wondering, yeah, brain spotting, do you connect that to a mystical experience? I've just been wondering
Yeah,
that.
very much. I mean,
Okay.
I had just started kind of doing brain spotting when I was writing that article and realizing it was giving me more of the language of, oh, this is a descent into the brain, and brain spotting makes that happen so fast that
Mm-hmm.
now I'm kind of seeing it and realizing this is just, it's not a new thing. That was the thing that was amazing is it's fast. There's more buy-in. I can get people to do it more,
Mm-hmm.
but it really isn't new. I've always, even when somebody took 3 months to go through, Ericksonian hypnosis, this is the same layers, the same point that they hit. Um, and to me, it's all signal to noise ratio. How do you do it faster while reducing the suffering for the patient? Because
Yeah.
the only way out is through. I mean, you can't really talk about these things in a way that makes them go away. You do have to go back into them.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, brain spotting and SLT, the kind of it's based on a lot of those same things. But that's what you're doing is you're just saying you're increasing metacognition. So you can
Mm-hmm.
really feel these things and observe them and be with them, but not be possessed by them.
So we're not talking about God in mysticism. It's like the self instead of God.
Well, I think it's these deep patterns and the material or spiritual reality or whatever kind of cosmology you want to put it in doesn't really matter to the definition. That's more the person ascribing where it comes from. And I think I say in that article, like a lot of times I tell people when they're asking me, like, yeah, but what's real? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just telling you how you get where you want to go and what this process is going to look like and helping you understand the process as it happens. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm not a priest. So, if you want to say, I can tell you the point is down there. If you want to say, oh, there's cosmic energy in the universe that are old gods and the brain is just the brain stem that we're aiming for is really just this antenna that picks up their energy,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine with me because it would feel the same and I don't know where it comes from. Or if you want to say, oh, we evolved here and the brainstem's moving, 40 times faster than the front of the brain and 10 times faster than the middle of the brain. So it's processing all this energy and we can't possibly experience all of it, but we can open a sensory gate and then I have better access to it. And that makes me, and it's a totally materialist scientific paradigm. Fine. I mean, I don't know. I don't even really know that it matters. I'm not even when it comes to that kind of material or spiritual whatever, I'm not even agnostic about it. I just don't
Uh,
think we can know, and I also don't think that,
it
or I don't think
matters.
I can know. I don't. If someone
Yeah.
else knows, that's fine. But
Yeah.
and I also don't think it is relevant to what I'm doing. You know,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
it's kind of like if you when you say like the universe is expanding in quantum physics, right? Like it's getting
Mm.
bigger.
Mm.
Um, like what you're really just saying is that there's this ball of rules and temperature, time, distance, all these things, they're all related, with math, these mathematical rules. And the amount of distance on the inside that we can measure is getting more. That doesn't really mean that from the outside it's expanding, right? Like
Mm.
it just
It's
means you can measure more distance on the inside.
so what we
Who knows
know,
what's going on the outside?
right? So what we know expands, but maybe not. And oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. All of the rules in quantum physics point you to what's going on inside of this universe.
uh,
None of them tell you what's going on outside of it.
okay, yeah. Now that's a good metaphor, and that's what we are in. Students of life. Joel Blackstock. I'm gonna say it correctly this time.
No, you're
Joel
fine.
Blackstock. I'm so happy that you were with us and you shared so much. And oh man, I need to take it all in. And I'm happy to check out your website and your podcast and be even more informed. So
Yeah,
thank you. I'm not idealizing you. But I am interviewing people that am interviewing for a reason. So I'm kind of idealizing a little bit. Hope it's
yeah.
okay.
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's wonderful
Good.
to meet you, and I'm sure you'll have a very bright, career.
Bright future. Hope so.
Yeah, but you can't know. I mean, it just feels scary to kind of go in and follow what you love and then watch it connect with other people. But you can't. You kind of have to go forward towards that on faith. You can't make a plan to know that it's going to happen.
Hmm.
You know.